Major Nick Davis stood on the surface of Kepler 442b and watched the last Zephyrian transport ship flee into space. The prison planet that had held 50,000 humans in slavery was now completely under human control. The awakened prisoners had not simply escaped, but had converted the entire world into a fortress using alien mining equipment as planetary defense systems. The transformation had taken only 6 hours. Humans who had never seen advanced technology before were now redesigning Zephyrian machinery with an intuitive understanding that shocked even themselves. The massive ore processors became weapon manufacturing plants. The transport networks became missile guidance systems. The power generators were boosted to levels their alien builders had never imagined possible. Sam Walsh coordinated the technical modifications from the Central Command Center that had previously been the Warden's office. His enhanced mind could visualize the entire planet's infrastructure and optimize every system for maximum efficiency. The humans worked together like components of a vast machine, each knowing exactly how their efforts contributed to the whole. On Luna Base, Dr. Lisa Carter was analyzing the data from human awakenings across the galaxy. The results exceeded her wildest projections. Every human who received the Phoenix signal had experienced immediate enhancement of their physical and mental capabilities. More importantly, they seemed to be developing a form of collective intelligence that allowed perfect coordination without communication. Jake Morrison had reorganized the defense of Earth's solar system, using awakened humans from a dozen different locations. Fighter pilots who had never met each other were flying in perfect formation. Engineers were collaborating on projects while separated by millions of miles. The enhanced humans shared information and plans through some form of quantum entanglement that science could not yet explain. The Zephyrian Empire was experiencing its first taste of defeat in over 1,000 years. Their intelligence reports described impossible events happening throughout their territory. Human slaves were not simply rebelling, but were systematically dismantling alien infrastructure and rebuilding it for their own purposes. Commander Vextar reviewed the tactical situation from his flagship and struggled to understand how the war had changed so dramatically. 3 days ago, humans had been a defeated species hiding in the ruins of their civilization. Now they were capturing Zephyrian ships and turning alien technology against its creators with frightening effectiveness. The water world of Aquatica Prime had been used as a research facility where Zephyrian scientists studied captured human specimens. When the Phoenix signal reached the prisoners, they broke out of their containment cells and took control of the entire facility within minutes. The alien researchers found themselves imprisoned by their former test subjects. Admiral Frank Collins had been presumed dead for 2 years after his fleet was destroyed in the Battle of Proxima Centauri. In reality, he had been held on Aquatica Prime, where Zephyrian scientists conducted experiments on human neural patterns. The Phoenix Awakening allowed him to escape and take command of the research station's fleet of captured human vessels. At Frank's enhanced tactical abilities let him calculate hyperspace jumps that should have been mathematically impossible. His small fleet began appearing behind Zephyrian lines and striking at command ships before disappearing back into hyperspace. The aliens could not predict or counter attacks that defied their understanding of space travel. Katie Bell had established contact with human resistance cells throughout the galaxy and was coordinating simultaneous strikes against Zephyrian installations. Her ability to interface with alien communication networks meant that human forces always knew where enemy ships were located and how they were defended. The Zephyrian Empire consisted of 12 different alien species that had been conquered and absorbed over the centuries. Many of these species had never willingly joined the Empire, but had been forced to serve through superior military power. The sudden human resurgence was causing some of these species to reconsider their allegiances. On the aquatic world of Cetacea, the dolphin-like, inhabitants had watched human prisoners being worked to death in underwater mining operations. When those same humans suddenly broke free and began converting Zephyrian equipment into defensive systems, the cetaceans realized that their oppressors might not be invincible after all. Alex Stone had taken control of 3 Zephyrian cruisers and was using them to liberate other prison facilities. His enhanced understanding of alien psychology allowed him to predict enemy responses and stay ahead of their attempts to recapture him. Each successful raid freed more humans and added more ships to his growing fleet. The prison ship Torment had been designed to break human spirits through systematic torture and humiliation. When the Phoenix signal reached the prisoners, they discovered that their enhanced abilities included resistance to psychological manipulation. The Zephyrian guards found themselves facing humans who could not be intimidated or controlled. Ben Taylor's fighter wing had grown into a full battle fleet as awakened humans captured and converted alien vessels throughout the solar system. They moved with precision that made Zephyrian formations look clumsy and disorganized. Every human pilot seemed to know exactly where every other pilot would be at any given moment. Dr. Carter's research revealed that the Phoenix Protocol had activated genetic sequences that dated back millions of years. The enhanced abilities were not new mutations, but were ancient capacities that had been deliberately suppressed. Humanity was remembering skills and knowledge that predated their recorded history. The Zephyrian homeworld of Zephyr Prime received increasingly desperate reports from their fleet commanders. Human forces were appearing everywhere at once and demonstrating tactical capabilities that surpassed anything in alien military doctrine. The Empire's most experienced admirals were being outmaneuvered by former slaves and prisoners. Commander Fextar made the decision to implement Protocol 7, which authorized the destruction of entire star systems, rather than allow them to fall under human control. If the Zephyrians could not defeat the awakened humans, then they would deny them any territory to occupy. Jake Morrison detected the protocol activation through captured alien communication networks and realized that the war was entering a new phase. The Zephyrians were preparing to destroy inhabited worlds rather than lose them to human liberation forces. The enhanced humans would need to move faster and strike harder to prevent genocidal retaliation. The tide of war had turned completely. Humans who had been hiding and dying for 50 years were now advancing on every front. The Zephyrian Empire was discovering that their former victims had become something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined possible. Nick Davis looked up at the stars from the surface of the liberated prison world and knew that humanity was no longer fighting for survival. They were fighting to ensure that no other species would ever again face the threat of extinction at alien hands. The quantum signal spread across the galaxy faster than light and found every human alive. On distant worlds and slave camps and prison facilities, something began to change. Men and women who had lived in defeat and despair suddenly felt power flowing through their bodies like electricity through copper wire. Commander Alex Stone had been declared dead 3 years ago when his ship was destroyed above the ruins of Earth. In reality, he had been captured and sent to work in the mining pits of Kepler-7, where thousands of humans dug rare metals from solid rock with their bare hands. When the Phoenix signal reached him, he felt his muscles grow stronger and his mind become sharper than ever before. The Zephyrian guards noticed the change immediately. Humans who had barely been able to lift their tools were now breaking through solid stone with single blows. The aliens raised their weapons but discovered that humans could now move faster than their targeting systems could. Alex grabbed the nearest guard's energy rifle and somehow understood exactly how it worked. His enhanced mind could see the flow of power through alien circuits and identify every weakness in their design. Within seconds, he had modified the weapon to be twice as powerful and turned it against its former owners. On Earth's surface, Katie Bell had been hiding in the ruins of New York for 2 years. She survived by scavenging from abandoned buildings and avoiding Zephyrian patrols. When the Phoenix signal reached her, she suddenly realized she could hear the electronic conversations between alien devices. Their technology was no longer mysterious, but became as clear as spoken words. She walked to the nearest Zephyrian outpost and placed her hands on their communication array. The alien guards watched in confusion as their equipment began to malfunction. Katie was not breaking their machines, but was instead talking to them and convincing them to work for her instead of their builders. The defense turrets turned toward the Zephyrian soldiers and opened fire. Communication systems began broadcasting human voices instead of alien commands. Transport vehicles started their engines and drove away from their bases without any drivers inside them. At Luna Base, the enemy bombardment had begun, but the weapons were not having their expected effect. Dr. Lisa Carter watched her instruments and realized that the base's shields were somehow absorbing and redirecting the alien energy beams. She looked at her hands and saw that she was unconsciously interfacing with the base's systems. Jake Morrison felt the change flowing through his body and mind. He could now see patterns in the enemy fleet's movements that revealed their tactical plans before they executed them. The Zephyrians were following standard attack procedures, but humans could now predict every move they would make. Ben Taylor ran to his fighter and discovered that he no longer needed the flight controls. His enhanced mind could communicate directly with the ship's computer and guide it through maneuvers that should have been impossible. He launched into space and found that he could outfly alien pilots who had centuries of experience. Throughout the galaxy, similar awakenings were happening everywhere humans still lived. On the waterworld of Titan Station, engineer Sam Walsh realized he could redesign alien machinery by simply looking at it. His enhanced understanding allowed him to turn Zephyrian manufacturing plants into weapon factories that produced human equipment. The prison planet Kepler 442b held 50,000 humans in labor camps spread across its surface. When the Phoenix signal reached them, they began to coordinate their actions without speaking or using any communication devices. They simply knew what each other was thinking and planning. Major Nick Davis had been a prisoner there for 18 months, but now he found himself leading a perfectly organized rebellion. Every human knew exactly where to be and what to do. They moved like parts of a single organism working toward a common goal, the Zephyrian. Guards tried to maintain control but discovered that their weapons were being turned against them by humans who had never seen alien technology before. The enhanced humans could understand and modify any device within minutes of touching it. Alex Stone had taken control of the entire mining facility on Kepler 7 and was now using the industrial equipment to build weapons and spacecraft. The humans worked together with impossible efficiency, as if they shared a single mind that could solve any problem. Katie. Bell had commandeered every piece of Zephyrian equipment in the New York ruins and was using it to contact other human survivors. Her signals reached resistance groups that had been hiding for years and gave them the knowledge they needed to fight back. Dr. Carter realized that the Phoenix Protocol had not given humans new abilities, but had instead activated capacities that had always been present in their genetic code. The ancient sequences she had discovered were not random mutations, but were instructions left by an older version of humanity that had existed long ago. The Zephyrian fleet around Luna Base found itself fighting an enemy that seemed to know their every move before they made it. Human fighters were dancing through their defensive fire and striking at weak points that should have been impossible to identify. Jake coordinated the battle from the command center, but he was no longer giving orders to individual pilots. Instead, he was thinking strategically, and every human in the battle could feel his thoughts and respond accordingly. They fought as a unified force that could adapt to any situation. Commander Vextar watched his fleet's tactical displays and could not understand what was happening. The humans were using their own captured weapons against them and somehow making those weapons more effective than their original designers had intended. Ben Taylor's fighter squadron had grown from 20 ships to over 100 as humans throughout the solar system had awakened and taken control of alien vessels. They flew in perfect formation without any radio communication and struck the enemy fleet like a coordinated storm. The Zephyrians had ruled the galaxy for a millennium because they were disciplined and followed proven tactical doctrines. But humans were now thinking and acting faster than any doctrine could anticipate. Every alien plan became obsolete before it could be implemented. On worlds throughout Zephyrian space, humans were escaping from slavery and turning their former masters' technology against them. The empire that had seemed unshakable was beginning to crack, as its most basic assumptions about warfare and conquest proved to be wrong. The Phoenix Protocol had awakened something in human genetics that transformed them from desperate survivors into something far more dangerous. They retained their humanity, but gained abilities that made them superior to any species the galaxy had ever seen. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the command center of Luna Base and watched the red lights flash across every screen. The base had been humanity's last secret for 3 years, but now the Zephyrians had found them. Outside the thick metal walls lay the dead surface of Earth's moon, and beyond that waited the largest alien fleet anyone had ever seen. Jake touched the communication button and his voice echoed through every corridor of the underground base. 3,000 humans lived here in the tunnels and chambers carved deep into the lunar rock. They were all that remained of a species that once numbered in the billions across dozens of worlds. Dr. Lisa Carter looked up from her workstation where streams of data flowed across multiple monitors. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls as she tried to finish the project that had consumed her for the past 2 years. The Phoenix Protocol was humanity's last hope, and she needed more time to complete it. Lieutenant Ben Taylor entered the command center with dust on his flight suit. He had just returned from what might be the final patrol mission any human would ever fly. His fighter squadron had spotted the edge of the Zephyrian fleet, and the numbers were worse than their worst estimates. The Zephyrians had ruled the galaxy for over 1,000 years. 12 different alien species had joined together under their banner and conquered every world they encountered. Humans had fought them for 50 years and lost every major battle. Earth was a burned wasteland. Mars was a slave camp. The outer colonies had been wiped out completely. Jake studied the tactical display that showed hundreds of enemy ships moving toward their position. Each vessel was larger than anything humans had ever built, and they carried weapons that could crack open planets. The Zephyrians had learned to be thorough in their conquests. Lisa's project was based on something she had discovered in ancient human genetic code. Hidden deep in their DNA were sequences that made no sense according to current science. She believed these sequences were not random, but were placed there by design. Her theory suggested that humans were far more than they appeared to be. Ben reported that the alien fleet would reach Luna Base in 6 hours. The base's defenses were strong, but they were designed to hide the facility, not fight a full invasion. Once the Zephyrians began their attack, the base would fall within minutes. The communication system activated and a deep alien voice filled the command center. Commander Vextar of the Zephyrian Empire spoke in perfect English, which he had learned specifically for dealing with human surrenders. His message was simple and direct. Humans would surrender unconditionally within 1 hour or face complete destruction. Every man, woman, and child would be eliminated. There would be no negotiations and no mercy. The Zephyrian Empire had decided that humanity was too dangerous to be allowed to exist even as slaves. Jake looked around the command center at the faces of his staff. These people had survived the fall of Earth and the destruction of every human colony. They had lived in hiding for years while their species died around them. Now they faced the final moment that would determine whether humans would continue to exist. Lisa spoke quietly about her unfinished work. The Phoenix Protocol required a specific genetic trigger that could only be activated by a quantum signal broadcast across subspace frequencies. She had built the transmitter, but needed 3 more hours to complete the genetic sequencing. Without it, the protocol would fail. Ben suggested they could buy time by launching their remaining fighters in a desperate attack. 20 pilots against hundreds of alien ships would not change the outcome, but it might confuse the enemy long enough for Lisa to finish her work. Jake considered the option but knew it would only delay the inevitable by minutes. The aliens had given them 1 hour, but Jake suspected they would attack regardless of any surrender. The Zephyrians had learned that humans were unpredictable and dangerous even when defeated. They preferred to eliminate threats completely rather than risk future problems. Jake made his decision and began recording a message that would be broadcast throughout the galaxy. He spoke about humanity's journey from a single world to the stars. He described their struggles and their refusal to accept defeat, even when facing impossible odds. He talked about human dreams and human determination. The message contained hidden codes that Lisa had embedded in the transmission. These codes would activate something that had been waiting in human genetics for thousands of years. The Phoenix Protocol was not just a weapon, but an awakening that would change what it meant to be human. As Jake finished recording the message, he looked at Lisa, who nodded that everything was ready. The transmission would reach every corner of the galaxy and find every human who still lived. Many were slaves on distant worlds. Others were prisoners in alien facilities. Some were thought dead but were hiding and waiting for a sign. Ben prepared the base's defenses knowing they would not be enough. The Zephyrians would come with overwhelming force and crush any resistance. But humans had always fought against overwhelming odds, and they would not change that tradition now. The hour deadline approached, and Jake activated the transmission. Across the galaxy, quantum signals began reaching human minds and touching the genetic codes that had waited so long to be activated. Something ancient and powerful stirred in human DNA and began to change everything. Commander Vextar received no surrender message and ordered his fleet to begin the attack. Massive energy weapons charged and targeted the lunar surface. The Zephyrians were confident this would be the final moment of human existence. Jake stood in the command center and watched the enemy fleet approach. In his hand he held the activation key for the Phoenix Protocol. Lisa had warned him that once activated there would be no going back. Humanity would either evolve or die, but they would never again be what they had been before. The first alien weapons fired and Jake pressed the activation key. The war had become something beyond anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Commander Vextar stood in the bridge of his flagship and watched entire star systems die as Zephyrian forces implemented their scorched galaxy policy. Rather than allow worlds to fall into human hands, they were destroying them completely with planet killing. Weapons that left nothing but debris and radiation. But for every world, the Zephyrians destroyed 10 more human resistance cells activated across their territory. The Phoenix Awakening had reached every corner of the galaxy, and humans who had been thought dead for years were emerging from hiding with abilities that defied explanation. Admiral Frank Collins materialized his fleet behind the Zephyrian battle group that had just finished destroying the colony world of Haven 7. His enhanced tactical mind had calculated a hyperspace jump that should have been impossible, but his awakened abilities allowed him to bend space-time in ways that alien science could not understand. Frank's ships opened fire before the Zephyrians realized they were under attack. The enhanced humans had learned to modify alien weapons during combat, making each shot more powerful than the designers had intended. Within minutes, the entire enemy fleet was either destroyed or captured by human forces. Dr. Lisa Carter had completed her ultimate project at Luna Base. The Consciousness Transfer Protocol allowed human minds to be backed up and transferred to new bodies when their original forms were destroyed. Death was no longer permanent for awakened humans, which made them effectively immortal warriors. The first test came when Ben Taylor's fighter was destroyed during a raid on the Zephyrian shipyards above Rigel 4. His consciousness was immediately transferred to a cloned body back at Luna Base, and within hours he was flying again with all his memories and enhanced abilities intact. The psychological effect on Zephyrian forces was devastating. They were fighting an enemy that could not be permanently killed and seemed to learn from every defeat. Human tactics improved with each battle as the collective intelligence shared experiences and developed new strategies. Katie Bell had established a network of human agents throughout Zephyrian space who were systematically sabotaging alien infrastructure from within. Her ability to communicate with any electronic device meant that no Zephyrian facility was truly secure. Weapons turned on their operators. Ships changed course without orders. Communication systems broadcast human propaganda instead of military commands. The prison ship Torment had been converted into a mobile liberation vessel under Alex Stone's command. He used it to free human captives from facilities throughout the galaxy, while simultaneously gathering intelligence on Zephyrian military operations. Each rescue mission added more awakened humans to the growing resistance. On the desert world of Eridus Prime, the lizard-like saurian species had served the Zephyrian Empire for 3 centuries as shock troops and planetary assault specialists. When they witnessed human prisoners breaking out of maximum security facilities and converting Zephyrian equipment into weapons, they began to question their loyalty to the Empire. The Saurians approached Alex Stone under a flag of truce and offered to share intelligence about Zephyrian military operations in exchange for protection from Imperial retaliation. Other alien species throughout the Empire were making similar overtures as they realized that human victory was becoming inevitable. Major Nick Davis had transformed the former prison world of Kepler 442b into a major industrial center that was producing human spacecraft faster than Zephyrian factories could build their own vessels. The awakened humans worked with efficiency that seemed supernatural as they converted raw materials into finished warships in record time. Sam Walsh had developed new manufacturing techniques that allowed humans to build ships that were superior to anything in the Zephyrian fleet. The enhanced human understanding of physics and engineering meant that their designs were more efficient and more powerful than alien technology that had been refined over millennia. Jake Morrison coordinated the overall war effort from Luna Base, but his role had evolved beyond traditional military command. He was now the focal point of a collective intelligence that included every awakened human in the galaxy. Strategic decisions were made instantly and implemented simultaneously across thousands of light years. The deed to Zephyrian homeworld of Zephyr Prime was surrounded by the most powerful, defensive fleet in galactic history. Layer upon layer of orbital platforms and military bases protected the capital from any conceivable attack. But human forces were no longer bound by conventional military thinking. Frank Collins led a massive assault fleet toward Zephyr Prime using hyperspace tactics that allowed his ships to appear inside the defensive perimeter without traveling through normal space. The Zephyrian defenders found themselves under attack from directions that should have been impossible. The battle for Zephyr Prime lasted 3 days and involved more ships than had ever fought in a single engagement. Human forces demonstrated tactical flexibility that confused and overwhelmed their opponents, while Zephyrian formations followed rigid doctrines that became predictable and exploitable. Dr. Carter's research had revealed the ultimate truth about human origins. The genetic sequences activated by the Phoenix Protocol were not natural evolution, but were deliberately placed in human DNA by an ancient civilization. Humans were the descendants of a species that had once ruled the galaxy before disappearing into legend. The awakening was not just about gaining new abilities, but was about remembering what humanity had once been capable of achieving. The enhanced humans were reclaiming their birthright as the galaxy's natural guardians and protectors of lesser species. Commander Vextar made the decision to activate the Empire's ultimate weapon. The Void Cannon could destroy entire solar systems by creating artificial black holes that consumed everything within their range. If the Zephyrians could not rule the galaxy, then they would ensure that no one else could either. But Jake Morrison and the collective human intelligence had anticipated this possibility. Hidden among the human resistance cells were awakened individuals who had gained the ability to manipulate space-time directly. When the Void Cannon fired, they redirected its energy back toward the weapon itself. The resulting explosion destroyed the Zephyrian capital ship and most of their remaining fleet. Commander Vexistar survived but found himself adrift in space, watching his empire crumble around him. The species that had ruled the galaxy for over a millennium was facing complete defeat at the hands of their former victims. The war was entering its final phase. Human forces controlled most of the galaxy's major trade routes and industrial centers. The remaining Zephyrian fleets were scattered and demoralized. Alien species throughout the Empire were either switching sides or declaring neutrality. But Jake Morrison and the awakened humans were planning something far more ambitious than simple victory. They intended to restructure galactic civilization entirely and ensure that no species would ever again face the threat of extinction or enslavement. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the former Zephyrian flagship, now renamed Terra's Vengeance, and looked out at the stars that had once seemed so hostile to human survival. The war was over, but not in the way anyone had expected. The humans had not simply defeated their enemies, but had transformed the entire structure of galactic civilization. Commander Vextar knelt in the ship's conference room, stripped of his rank and facing the humans he had tried to exterminate. He expected execution or imprisonment, but Jake had something different in mind. The awakened humans had learned that fear created tyrants while hope created heroes, and they chose to offer the galaxy hope. Dr. Lisa Carter's final research had revealed the complete truth about human origins. The species that had placed genetic sequences in human DNA millions of years ago had been the galaxy's previous guardians. They had disappeared not through destruction, but through evolution into something beyond physical existence. Humanity was meant to take their place. The Phoenix Protocol had not given humans new abilities, but had activated dormant capacities that were their birthright. The enhanced strength, speed, and intelligence were only the beginning. Awakened humans could manipulate space-time, communicate across any distance, and interface directly with any technology they encountered. But the most important change was in human psychology. The collective intelligence that connected all awakened humans meant that they could never again be driven by the petty conflicts and territorial disputes that had plagued their species for millennia. They thought and acted as a unified organism, dedicated to protecting all life in the galaxy. Admiral Frank Collins had accepted the surrender of the last Zephyrian fleet without firing a shot. The alien commanders realized that continued resistance was futile when facing an enemy that could predict their every move and counter any strategy they devised. More importantly, they began to understand that humans offered them something the Empire never had: a choice. The Human Galactic Confederation was unlike any government the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of conquest and subjugation, it was based on voluntary cooperation and mutual benefit. Each species contributed their unique strengths while maintaining their cultural identity and territorial independence. The Zephyrians themselves became some of humanity's most dedicated allies once they understood that humans were not interested in revenge or domination. Their military experience and tactical knowledge proved invaluable in establishing the Confederation's defense forces and maintaining peace throughout their territory. Katie Bell had established communication networks that connected every inhabited world in the galaxy. Her ability to interface with any technology meant that information and ideas could flow freely between species that had never been able to communicate before. Trade and cultural exchange flourished under human protection. Major Nick Davis commanded the Confederation's rapid response forces that could appear anywhere in the galaxy within hours to prevent conflicts or provide assistance during natural disasters. The former prison world of Kepler 442b had become a training center where humans and aliens learned to work together as peacekeepers. Alex Stone led exploration, missions beyond the galaxy's edge where new threats were beginning to emerge from the void between star systems. Ancient enemies of the previous galactic guardians were stirring and preparing to test the resolve of their successors. But humans were ready for challenges that their predecessors had faced eons ago. The aquatic cetaceans had become humanity's partners in developing new technologies that could function in the vast ocean worlds scattered throughout the galaxy. Their natural understanding of fluid dynamics combined with human engineering skills produced innovations that benefited every species in the Confederation. Sam Walsh established manufacturing centers on 1,000 worlds where humans and aliens worked together to build the infrastructure needed for a truly galactic civilization. The enhanced human ability to understand and improve any technology meant that every species' capabilities were multiplied through cooperation. Ben Taylor commanded the Confederation's exploration fleets that were mapping regions of space that had been forbidden during the Zephyrian Empire's reign. Ancient ruins and abandoned worlds revealed clues about the galaxy's history and the civilization that had once guided its development. Dr. Carter's consciousness transfer technology had been adapted to create a form of immortality that was available to any species that chose to accept it. Death became a temporary inconvenience rather than a permanent ending, which allowed individuals to accumulate knowledge and experience across centuries of existence. The former Zephyrian homeworld of Zephyr Prime had been transformed into the Confederation's capital, where representatives from hundreds of species worked together to address challenges that affected the entire galaxy. Decisions were made through consensus rather than force, which required patience but produced solutions that benefited everyone. Commander Vextar had accepted Jake's offer to join the Confederation's defense forces, where his military experience was valued despite his former role as humanity's enemy. He discovered that humans judged others by their actions rather than their past, and that redemption was always possible for those willing to change. The Luna base, where humanity had made its final stand, became a memorial and a symbol of the transformation that was possible when any species refused to surrender in the face of impossible odds. Visitors from throughout the galaxy came to learn about human determination and the power of hope over despair. Jake Morrison's role had evolved beyond military command into something resembling galactic leadership, but without the authority or power that traditional rulers possessed. He served as a focal point for the collective human intelligence and a voice for peaceful cooperation between species. The awakened humans had spread throughout the galaxy not as conquerors but as teachers and protectors. They established colonies and outposts that served as beacons of freedom and safe harbors for any species facing oppression or extinction. No civilization would ever again face the darkness alone. New threats were already appearing from beyond the galaxy's edge, where ancient enemies of the previous guardians were preparing to test humanity's resolve. But these challenges would be met by a united confederation of species working together, rather than by any single civilization fighting alone. The title of the story had revealed its true meaning. Humanity's end had come not through destruction, but through evolution into something greater than they had ever been before. The species that had once struggled to survive on a single world had become the galaxy's conscience and its shield against the darkness. Dr. Carter made her final log entry as she prepared to join an expedition beyond the galactic rim where new forms of life waited to be discovered and protected. Humanity had ended, she wrote, but something far greater had begun. The galaxy would never again face extinction alone because humans would always be there to stand between civilization and the void.